Todd McShay of ESPN had some very interesting things to say about the New York Jets and what their draft strategy might be.
Inside, and a beauty! Hall running free! Brees Hall inside the 10! He's gonna score!
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and today we're going to be talking about specifically Todd McShay's comments that he made during his media availability yesterday. Now, why are we singling out Todd McShay and what he's saying? Well, there's a lot of reasons for us to be singling him out. The first one is going to be his well-known, publicly outed relationship that he has with Joe Douglas. They had I think they came from the same programs and all of these different things. Like, whenever Todd McShay comes out and says, I'm hearing from NFL GMs, you can almost 100% be sure that Joe Douglas is one of those NFL GMs that he's hearing about. So, very important piece of info there. Now, the other thing that we have to take into consideration is that because of their relationship, I feel like Todd McShay, of any of the draft analysts, is going to know more than anything, more than anybody, what Joe Douglas is thinking. So when Rich Cimini asked Todd McShay, he said, how does Joe Douglas follow up on a super successful draft that he had last year with the offensive rookie and defensive rookie of the year? And Todd McShay goes on to answer and say, you know what? That's going to be a very difficult task when you walk away with those types of players, and recreating that is always going to be difficult. Kind of alluding to the fact that we had 4 first-round picks last year, essentially, with Brees Hall, Jermaine Johnson, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, 2 of those guys winning Rookie of the Year. You're always going to have a hard time matching that. But then he followed that up by saying that he believes that the New York Jets are 100% in on taking an offensive tackle at 13. Makes so much sense. That's what we've all been saying. I think that's what a lot of us agree on, and I'm totally on board. But the names that he mentioned, specifically tying them to the New York Jets, are what interest me more than anything that he said about anything else, because he started off the clip by saying, specifically talking about Peter Skoronski and how Joe Douglas probably going to fall in love with a guy like Peter Skoronski, but he's probably not going to be available there at 13. Totally agree. Now, I don't necessarily think that Joe Douglas would take Peter Skoronski at 13. Has nothing to do with Peter Skoronski and his ability, but everything to do with I just don't know if a guy with sub 33-inch arms is going to be looked at as a tackle specifically by Joe Douglas. Now, that's a different conversation. That's a different argument. You guys know how much I love Peter Skoronski. I just don't see the fit for the New York Jets. The next name that he brought up, and he spent a good amount of time talking about, was Broderick Jones, before transitioning away from Broderick Jones and talking about Darnell Wright. So let's talk about the names that he mentioned, the names that he didn't mention, and what that might mean. One, I totally agree. I think that if you're Joe Douglas, if you're Robert Saleh, and you've honed in on the offensive tackle position being the position that you need, the guy that you would have honed in on, the guy that you would have made your number one target, should be, in my mind, Broderick Jones. He's just by far and away the best athlete at the offensive tackle position, and with what we ask our tackles to do, that's a big deal. But also, he has the least amount of wear and tear on him. He's played left tackle and right tackle, coming from an all-star program at Georgia. And a lot of the concerns that people are going to have about him is like, oh my gosh, isn't he raw? What about he doesn't have a bunch of starts? Well, he went to Georgia, and it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, he hasn't played a ton of football at the college level, but when he played, he dominated, and that matters. And the other thing is, the benefit there is he also doesn't have a bunch of wear and tread on his proverbial body. He doesn't have 4,000 snaps at the offensive line position. That's true. So he might not be as experienced as some other things, but when you take into consideration how athletically gifted the guy is and just how well he did against SEC competition, as at Georgia, I'm cool with it. And the other thing is, he has, I think, the ability to have a longer career, because again, where's the wear and tear on his body? Where is this There's no injury history. There's no nothing. And then the other name that he mentioned was Darnell Wright, the guy who's kind of like the opposite of Broderick Jones. Not in the sense of like he's also insanely athletically gifted. He's probably only really going to be a right tackle at the next level. That's kind of where he's been pegged. Now, do I think that he has the opportunity and the ability to play left tackle? Maybe, but when you look at his skill set and what he provides, it's ideal for what you want in your right tackle. A mauler in the run game, just aggressive and mean, and that's exactly what he is. But he didn't mention Paris Johnson Jr., and I think that that's a very interesting tidbit there when talking about the tackles. You have a lot of people that have Paris Johnson as tackle 1 on their board. If you guys are interested in finding out who my tackle rankings are, stay tuned. That'll be coming out in the coming days. But I think it's super interesting that he talked about Peter, Broderick, and Darnell Wright, but he didn't talk about Paris Johnson Jr., Anton Harrison, and some of the other tackles that are on the class. And I think that that's very telling about what Joe Douglas might be thinking about these tackles. Guys, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about these tackles? Do you think that we should be taking what Todd McShay says with a grain of salt? Do you think that he does have an inside track on what the New York Jets are doing? Let me know in the comment section below. And last but not least, go Jets.